In my last video, Leadership and the Number 12, I asserted that the maximum effective range of a single individual's leadership is 12. This assertion works off the assumption that a leader is a person to whom problems are brought. No matter the context, the maximum number of people an individual can deal with one-on-one is 12, and more realistically, this number is closer to 4. We looked at examples of sports teams and military units that appeared to follow this 12-4 leadership principle. However, as we all know, most organizations appear to operate on what might be described as an extended leadership principle. Often an individual will be, quote, in charge, even if the common worker has limited interaction with this, quote, leader. In the military, this situation is described as a command situation. This is what this video is about. Let's go back to our first military example in the last video, platoon. The most basic platoon is the infantry platoon with about 40 individuals. We have a headquarters element consisting of the lieutenant and the platoon sergeant and perhaps a medic and fire support. And we have 3 line squads with 2 sergeants and 2 crew serve teams, also with 2 sergeants. This is our 412. If we subtract the 412 team from the platoon as a whole, we are left with the 28 Joes. In the Army, we describe these Joes as, quote, under the command of the platoon leader. Of course, a platoon is small enough that the LT often resorts to more direct leadership methods. And for this reason, among many other more traditional ones, platoons aren't technically considered a, quote, command in the same way a full company is. Command is commonly understood to start at company level. There is no sports team equivalent to a military command. Now, if you watched my last video of leadership and the number 12, then surely you have considered the oddity that was the Roman army. What does the structure of the Roman army tell us about the modern idea of command? Were ancient army leaders more like modern officers or modern NCOs, or does this distinction even matter? Why does Wikipedia consider centurions roughly equivalent to a captain? Doesn't the close order of ancient battle shade this as dubious? Aren't centurions more equivalent to modern senior NCOs, such as a sergeant first class, a master sergeant, a first sergeant, or even just a plain drill sergeant? The reason why centurions are roughly equivalent to modern captains has everything to do with the rule of 12, which was covered in my last video. Past 12 people, a person, quote, in charge is no longer leading. Instead, past the number 12, a leader is commanding. A leader, in the most basic sense, is there to answer questions and solve problems. However, by design, a commander, under most circumstances, is not available to most of their charges. A common soldier's and even a common leader's problems are not a commander's problems. The commander has more prescient and overriding concerns relevant to the whole formation. This reality of the rule of 12 is, or should be obvious to anyone who has formed up dress right dress in a battalion, regimental, or brigade mass formation. And this is the thing about the Roman army. Its fighting line was a mass formation. In my estimation, as a practical matter, there is very little, perhaps even no difference in the command and control between the so-called Roman manipular army of the early Republic and the cohorts of the late Republic. This despite the scattershot prose of text on the Roman army. A voice only carries so far in the scrum, and even the commander's horn is only as good as the common soldier's training. Thing is, you can clearly see what I call the rule of 12 in both illustrations presenting the manipular and the cohort models. My previous video highlights the necessity for leadership by the rule of 12 on down the chain. For this and the reasons outlined in my previous video, I'm generally skeptical of whatever a civilian Roman military historian is asserting about the structure of the Roman army. These historians just don't know what questions to ask. The fact is, the leadership requirement for the army remains constant regardless of the social status, or rank, or recognition. As always, the recruitment pool is ever changing and new and different people rise to the occasion. However, structurally, both the maniple and the cohort are more like each other than different. Civilian military historians are just too caught on the fetters of army life and don't really care about the realities. This seems like a good place to stop. I hope this was useful.